This is Good Morning Mumbai, and you're with Hrishi K.
Radio 1.
An inspirational gentleman in studio. He's world renowned because of the quality of how he's built his, can I call it the business empire? He's too modest, he wouldn't like that. But anyway, he's CEO and co-founder of Mastek. Everybody knows Mastek, that multinational IT services giant, which has taken the world by storm. And Sudhakar Ram has so much more to him than just the company, and you will find out during the course of this hour. Hi, how are you? Nice flight here from the UK?
Yeah. Pretty good. I've been here for the last week or so.
Excellent. Okay, got to ask you right up ahead. There are some people who discovered your book. Incidentally, for all you who listen, The Connected Age, Being the Best You Can by Reinventing Your World, is out now. Go and pick it up. It's a novel by Sudhakar Ram. A lot of people didn't know, including me, that the blogs and him online and his thoughts being expressed there came before the book. I'm sure there are going to be lots of converts, people who read the book and go back to your blog. So what was that all about?
So it was 2009, Hrishi, and I had ideas of starting a book around this topic. I met actually an editor of Harvard Business Publishing, and he advised that don't do a book directly because you don't have a lot of content, but start blogging, start working, start living this kind of idea of a connected age, and then best way to do in today's world is to write blogs. And I thought it was an interesting idea, so I got started. I think the first blog was in September of 2009, and I just continued doing that week after week. And the whole idea was to go and discover people who were actually embodying connected age principles in some way or the other. I'll come to what the connected age is a little later, but as I met these guys, it was really inspirational, and it actually helped me transform my own life. I started reading books about history to see what not to repeat, because one of the advantages of reading history is you know what works, what doesn't work. So reading books, meeting people, looking at other institutions, organizations, and every week religiously I would blog. So I think I'm on my 242nd or 43rd blog now over the last 5 years, and it's been an exciting journey.
And you call them the new constructs. Where did you get that title from?
So it actually came from the fact that we need to reinvent various parts of ourselves. Our entire society today is built on a particular set of edifice, a certain set of pillars, and we need to reconstruct these pillars. And that's how the idea of a new constructs came. And I called the age the connected age, not because it's I mean, a lot of people confuse it because I'm an IT person that I'm talking about ICT or something. It has nothing to do with internet or technology. It's actually all about the fact that we are much better connected with one another across the globe. Earlier, we would be connected at our village level. Today, we can access people across the globe, and we have a immediate feel for events which happen everywhere. When there is an issue in Syria, all of us know about it. When there is an earthquake in Haiti, immediately people rush to support, or a tsunami in Japan. Those kind of connections today are almost, we take it for granted, but our fathers and grandfathers didn't take it for granted. So we are in a completely different age from connections perspective. The second, even more important, is our connection to the planet. Earlier we were in one small place, but today issues like, people like Greenpeace have really made a planet salient. Green movement has made it salient, and so we are far more aware of what's the reality of the situation around us and how are we actually impacting the ecosphere. And third, even more important, is our connection to ourselves. See, we understand that we are multi-layered, that it's not just our thoughts, it's not just our feelings, it's not just our intellect, that there is something more to us than all that, and that connection is also flowering in this age. So the connected age is about exploring all these connections in a much more authentic and integral fashion.
Rick Astley never going to give you up. Post the song. I'm going to ask him about how the greed of the industrial age is slowly transforming into something else. In studio, CEO and co-founder of Mastek, Sudhakar Ram. Don't go anywhere. Some flavor of the 80s. Rick Astley, never going to give you up. One of the most inspirational leaders of our time is in studio. CEO and co-founder of Mastek, the IT giant. Sudhakar Ram has written The Connected Age, Being the Best You Can by Reinventing Your World. It's a very breezy read. In fact, I was done with it over the course of one night, and never at any point did it weigh down on me on being a heavy work. Like he says, people expect him to write about the intricacies of the IT life, but this is really so much more. What I love about this is the fact that you've actually done a deconstruct of the ages that mankind has gone through, and all the ages, and in particular the industrial age, which led to a lot of greed, and we saw how the West had this whole economic meltdown because of that. And India slowly is headed in that direction. What might perhaps save us are our socialistic values and principles. So talk about that as regards the connected age, and what do you see as the present and the future?
Sure. That's a long...
Yeah, it is. But we can always break it up with some songs and come back to it.
Sure.
So just talk as much as you want.
No problem. So humanity started off as hunter-gatherers. You know that we were foragers in essence, and slowly we started settling down after hundreds of thousands of years, and we became agriculturists. So a large part of our history has been agricultural, at least the history that we know. Before that, it was not history because it was not documented. But over the last 200, 220, 250 years has been the onset of the industrial age. And it's a period of tremendous growth and expansion of the world. In fact, world GDP grew by 49 times between 1800 and 2000, according to economic historians. So it's a huge expansion. And that obviously improved standards of life for a significant set of people. So it has definitely a set of positives. Our life today is what it is because of the industrial age. But it's also what it is because of the industrial age. So it has its negatives also. So negatives are that there are more than 1 billion people at less than $1 a day. So people are poor. We are consuming about 1.5 times our planet. So it's not sustainable. All of us know it, but we just hope that it will vanish. That if we convince ourselves or psych ourselves into believing that some technology miracle will happen and we may not need food, we may not need anything, that things will change. So clearly we know that this is not a sustainable thing. And the unfortunate part about the industrial age is everything is centered around material aspects and money. Money is a very seductive measure because you can measure individual wealth with money. You can look at market capitalization.
I like the fact, sorry to interrupt, saying that mankind started with barters and then they realized it's a little difficult to do barters. Exactly. So they invented money. Yeah, go ahead.
And today the money has taken over far more than what originally man intended money to be. So it's become a thing that we worship. And I mean, countries' GDP. GDP itself as a measure came only during recession in the US in the 1930s. And it was supposed to be a short-term thing. It was just to boost the economy. And now we live by GDP. And we all get very upset when GDP in India drops to 5%. We think it's great when it is 9%. But fact is, it doesn't impact the life of most of us in any significant way. So we need a shift from this. And we are looking at the 21st century where these things are not going to actually sustain us. We've had a system of education which is an assembly line. You take a bunch of kids, put them through one standard set of things through K through 12, and then they all want to go to college. At the end of it,
the focus is a job.
Exactly. And are we creating the kind of people which 21st century needs? I think that's the key. And that's what this entire connected age is trying to explore, saying how do we need to reframe our own context, rethink various things which we have taken as almost given in our lives, and look at it with a very close eye and see how.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to do now. A Destiny's Child jump in coming up. Post this some messages, and then when we come back, now we know what the problem is. And now how the connected age deals with that, and some precepts, if we can call that. And during these messages, what I'm going to do is going to put pictures of Sudhakar Ram up on Twitter as well as Facebook. It's at HRISHIKAY on Twitter, so you can follow that handle and you'll see them on the timeline. On Facebook, it's facebook.com/radio1.mum, radio1.mum. You like the page, and you'll see pictures. And that's where you can actually post on the interview. You can ask any questions if you want, and we'll bring it up. Yeah. So enjoy yourself. It's 9:18. Good morning.
And now you fellas leave your girl with her friends, 'cause it's 11:30 and the club is jumping. Always say you got a girl, yeah, it's true you got a man, but the party ain't gon' stop, so let's take.
This is Good Morning Mumbai, and you're with Hrishi K.
Radio 1.
Sudhakar Ram is CEO and co-founder at Mastek, one of the foremost business leaders of our time. And his book is called The Connected Age, Being the Best You Can by Reinventing Your World. The travels. There's such wonderful people that you've quoted here. And like I told you off the mic, I have no qualms in admitting it over the mic. a foreword by Peter Senge, the author and thinker. I was exposed to him by virtue of this foreword, and he's obviously somebody who's really, really special. So talk about the people you've quoted, the people you met during the writing of this book, and of course Peter Senge himself. Yeah.
So Peter Senge is one of the heroes of our time in terms of management thinking. So he wrote a book called The Fifth Discipline way back in the 90s, and that was almost like a Bible for all of us. I mean, I've personally read that book 6 or 7 times, and it was such a delight to meet Peter after almost worshipping him as a thought leader. And he brought the whole idea of systems thinking into the way we look at stuff. So the basic idea is we tend to look at things very linearly, that I do this and therefore something happens. But when you have a large complex system, you cannot figure out what you do, what is the impact it has, because the results are actually distanced in what he calls time and space. So what you do has an impact maybe 2 years from now. It has an impact 3,000 miles away. It's like the famous butterfly which flutters its wings in Brazil and it creates a hurricane somewhere else. So it's like that, and that's actually the idea that Peter brought into the whole thing. And I mean, personally, when I look at the connected age, it's largely inspired by the fact that the world is a system, and what are the levers by which we can transform the world.
Sorry to interrupt again. You call it the monoculture, that particular thought, which is just one standard culture. And continue.
Sure. So basically, the world is a diverse place, and I mean, when we all adopt a Western form of life, we actually get rid of all the diversity, which is actually the richness which is required to sustain and grow the human race. Because if you see history, what happens is any kind of inbreeding actually leads to a loss of a species. So you need more and more different ideas for any species to actually evolve and expand and be vibrant in any specific context. So that's all part of any system. So Peter talked about system thinking. Someone like Stephen Covey, who I've read his 7 Habits again several times. So it talked about the whole idea of being proactive and the idea of circle of concern, circle of influence, which I've used a lot in actually defining what a connected ager, as I call him, needs to be. That you're looking at people who are actually experiencing personal power, that they are able to regain their power and act very powerfully, instead of giving up all the thing to some larger system, some larger organization, some government, and acting as a victim. Because that was a key thing that Covey talked about, that don't be a victim, don't be powerless. Look at how you can regain your own personal power. If I look at someone like Benjamin Zander, who's not that well known in India, but a wonderful book called Art of Possibility. He's a conductor in Boston Philharmonic. He he had a very unique idea in terms of, he said, this whole thing of grades and evaluation actually puts more stress and more pressure on people, and I've noticed it myself in a place like Mastek, that when you have grades and when you have appraisals and when you have a particular ranking, people seem to be obsessed with that rather than being the best they can be. So he said, he told his entire class one time that every one of you is going to get an A in this course.
Wow.
So they were all wondering, what is this? How can I be an A? Because then is there any difference between donkeys and horses? No, he said the only condition is you have to write a letter dated 1 year from now saying why you deserve to be an A. And just write it, send it to me, and I'll give you an A, and now you play freely. And the whole class actually started doing brilliantly because there was no pressure of grades. Then they didn't have to worry about competitiveness. They could actually be the best they could be. So it's a wonderful example which today we are trying out at Mastek, saying we will stop all appraisals and give everyone an A. So
spectacular. Benjamin Zander, he's more a conductor of human beings than he is of the Philharmonic Orchestra. Travis Singh, what an enlightening conversation. Sudhakar Ram from Mastek will be in studio through the course of the hour. It's 9:31. My name is Hrishi. Enjoy this one, and we'll come back with more questions. I've actually tweeted this saying, just listening to this man means I'm growing every second. CEO, co-founder of Mastek, Sudhakar Ram, talking about The Connected Age, which is his book, and of course, The New Constructs, a blog that has 500,000 followers, and it's really a guidebook about personal change that anybody can benefit from. So we talked about Zander, we talked a little bit about Covey, we talked a little bit about Peter Senge, some of the foremost authors and thinkers of our generation, Who else? Come on, I'm hungry for more. I'm greedy for more knowledge.
So actually, I would say the Leonardo da Vinci of our times, unfortunately I could never meet him, was a person by name Buckminster Fuller. I don't know whether you've heard of Buckminster.
I haven't.
Buckminster is a wonderful guy who's spent all his time designing and inventing new things with the firm conviction that humanity can always survive any crisis based on just the ingenuity of the human being. So that actually gives great inspiration to people who normally one would look at the situation and look at it as gloom and doom. But when you read Buckminster, of course Buckminster is very difficult to read because his average sentence is about 500 words. And it's a complex, each of the words is a concatenated, hyphenated thing. So it takes very serious reading to be able to understand Buckminster. But if you understand him, he was way ahead of his times in terms of thinking. And as you can see in the book, a lot of my inspiration has also come from Gandhiji, that everything that Gandhi actually thought of probably was way ahead of his times in the 1940s and 1930s, and it's probably far more relevant today. In fact, the model of governance that I talk about is based on Swarajya and village republics, is far more relevant today to the world than having very large complex countries being governed as a single country. I mean, we know the problem in, let's say, US, which is just 300 million. I mean, we expected a lot out of Obama, and today there's a level of disappointment saying he couldn't do all that he promised to do. We have that problem in UK, we have the problem in Middle East, and we have also had these kind of issues over last 10 years in India in terms of a governance deficit. Now, one is we keep looking for a Superman to solve the problem, and sometimes I wonder, is this really one person's problem, or should there be engagement at the citizen level to solve these problems? So the idea of a village government actually makes government far more accessible to people. So another person I read about is someone who talks about citizenry, how citizenship changes in the 21st century with the internet. And this was actually a mayor of San Francisco who's experimented how you can have more direct democracy and direct governments in some way. So, I mean, the range of people I've met and read over this period is phenomenal, and each one has really added a lot in terms of my own understanding of the world, both from the perspective of what it is today, what is right or wrong with it, as well as what it can possibly be, which is more important. And the entire Connected Age book is my vision for the 21st century. That this is what we can have as a world, and are we looking at aspiring to something like that, and are we taking steps to make it happen?
I'm going to actually come back, post this song and some messages, and talk about this beautiful thing that you've talked about human evolution as far as governments of the world are concerned. You know, which is Adam Smith's capitalist theory, where, everybody said you've got to work for yourself as an individual and thereby society shall flourish. And then communism came in and they said you have to work for the state and thereby you shall flourish. And what the Connected Age therein leads into. Simply read, thrill me more pictures of Sudhakar Ram at HRISHIKAY on Twitter. You can follow that handle, and you can also react. On Facebook, it's facebook.com/radio1.mum, RADIOONE.MUM. Like the page, see pictures, and also post or ask questions. 9:38. What a fabulous conversation.
Let's not break up.
This is Good Morning Mumbai, and you're with Hrishi K.
Radio 1.
The Connected Age, being the best you can by reinventing your world, is Sudhakar Ram's work over years and years. And also, The New Constructs is his blog, where he's drawn on the ideas of several thinkers such as Mahatma Gandhi, E.F. Schumacher, Stephen Covey, Paul Hawken, Bill McKibben, and of course Benjamin Zander and Peter Senge, who he's just talked about. Now, first and foremost, you've been writing this book, writing these blogs, and running your company simultaneously, right?
Yep.
A lot of people would say that is miraculous. I mean, there are people into the mountains, take a sabbatical from work and do their writing. So you're able to manage time to do both without taking a sabbatical, yeah?
No. Obviously, it eats into my weekend, but this is something that my wife is also involved with, so it helps because we go and visit some of these amazing people and institutions together. So a Saturday typically is devoted to gaining new experiences, which I then convert into a blog.
Nice. Now let's talk about how you're using the precepts, the constructs of the Connected Age in the real world with Mastek. You talked briefly about how you're doing away with the appraisal system, but other than that.
So if I look at the principles of connected age, it boils down to a couple of key factors. One is that the individual is sovereign, and we are looking at individual being empowered. Now, empowerment is such a cliched word that everybody uses empowerment, and often the spirit is lost. But really, when we are looking at empowerment, we are saying, should a person actually have a boss, or is he his own boss? So we started implementing what we call as Mastek 4.0, where people don't have bosses. In fact, there are seniors who are available, but they operate as servant leaders whose job is to make the juniors more successful. So it is
more like a mentor's role.
Yeah, it's a mentor or a coach, or just being an encouragement. So the youngsters, who are actually the most important part, because all the code that we write, whether it's for insurance systems or government programs and so on, is all written by youngsters who are let's say 3-4 years out of college and so on, and they form the entire brain and the spirit behind the whole company. So how do we actually enable them and empower them to be their best is the principle behind Mastek 4.0. The second is, we realize that when you have a large organization and you have what are typically called key result areas, KRAs, so it keeps cascading level to level, function to function. It actually encourages siloed thinking rather than everybody looking at the whole. So today, every Mastekeer is actually encouraged to look at the customer and see how do we wow our customers, how do we delight them, how do we provide them much better business impact. We are also looking at how do you support one another, develop and have an abundance of talent in terms of highly engaged Mastekeers. And third is, take a look at long term the Mastek in terms of the assets that we create, the intellectual property that we build, the new innovations that we do. Now, these are three things which everybody understands, that you're in business because of your customers, you need to grow talent because that's what this entire business is, and you need to build long-term value in the company. So every Mastekeer is only committed to those three, and he sets his own goals. So the company does not give anyone any goal. On these three parameters, every Mastekeer sets their own goal, saying this is what I will do this year or I will do this quarter in terms of enhancing what I deliver to the customer or what the team delivers to the customer. The second is in terms of how we will develop talent as a team. And the third is what kind of assets are we going to build. So it actually becomes quite simple. Instead of the complex thing where you're trying to cascade down, you've aligned everyone to well-being of Mastek as a whole. And that's actually the same as the connected age principle, where we are saying every individual is actually taking accountability over the well-being of the world, that each one of us is a citizen of the world, and we need to ensure that we leave the world a better place for our future generations.
Beautiful. It's 9:51. Brian Adams, the only thing that looks good on me is yo. And post the song, more conversation. Sudhakar Ram is in studio.
Try it on, baby.
In conversation with Sudhakar Ram, CEO and co-founder at Mastek. Let's talk now about evolving markets and the individual's role. I briefly mentioned it earlier on when I talked about how in the book you've talked about Adam Smith's principles of capitalism, and then we moved to communism, which didn't last, and now we come to the connected age. So a bit about that, please.
Sure. So the notion of markets that Adam Smith had, and he was one of the first political economists, as we call it, envisaged thousands, or at that time thousands of people coming together as buyers and sellers in a marketplace with perfect competition, and he had a set of criteria to define perfect competition. Unfortunately, we took it and bastardized it in our own way. And today we have completely imperfect markets. So though we say free markets, they are the most unfree because it's largely monopolistic or oligopolistic, where a few people with a lot of money power actually govern what happens in the market. I think the connected age is all about regaining the spirit of smallness and having many players and a completely level playing field. In fact, the only role of governance is to ensure that there is a level playing field across all buyers and sellers, and everybody has an equal role to play in the market. I think that's a major shift that we need to take place. And all of us as individuals are producers as well as consumers. So, in fact, some of the new technology, I mean, we have looked at internet with wonder over the last 10-15 years about the amount of change that it has made. But there is actually the world of, I mean, internet is a world of bits, and there is a world of atoms. And just last week I was reading a book by Chris Anderson, who has done The Long Tail, who's talked about how manufacturing is going to completely change in the next 15-20 years because of things like 3D printing, where you can sit in your home and print your own products in a very low cost desktop, like your laser printer you have. Now all of us have laser printers at home. You're going to have manufacturing printers at home which are 3D printers. So it will change the nature of manufacturing completely. Now one of the things that we have to look at from a green or an ecological perspective is amount of waste that we have when things move from place to place. Like you take a tomato, it travels 2000 miles before it reaches someone's plate. The cost or the energy equivalent of that is several times the calorific value of a tomato. So those things have to change. And
local produce.
Yeah, local produce, deep economies, which Bill McKibben talks about. I think that's the way of the future. And things like 3D printing, actually being conscious about what we consume. I mean, we have had nutritionists like Dr. Vijaya Venkat who say best food for you is what is grown locally and what is available in that season. Instead, we want mangoes in December and we want to take apples which are grown 1,000 miles away, which is not anyway good for our health.
Yeah.
So the nature of consumption, how we live, how we eat also has to change in the connected age. And one more aspect is actually that, I mean, we all talk about jobs. Now, India is a place where jobs actually are irrelevant because we have the most entrepreneurial culture. So out of a workforce of 450 million people, today there are only 30 million people in organized sector. And out of 30 million, 22 million are in government, in public sector or government. So there's only 7-8 million which all of us, including IT and manufacturing and car and all, employ directly. Obviously there is also indirect employment. But the future for India is not more jobs. Future for India is more entrepreneurs. In fact, India has the highest number of entrepreneurs in the world. We have almost 150 million entrepreneurs. US has probably 20-30 million. China is not as entrepreneurial as it could be because of the nature of the state. So that's the potential that India has for youngsters to take and start doing something interesting, something new, and something which is very impactful for the world as a whole.
Nikhil Kajrolkar, thank you. Thank you, Sujay Karnad. Hi, Nicole. Girish Barve, thank you. Ayer Baba, I'm glad you're enjoying the conversation. Tarun Tripathi, hi, good morning. Hi, AS. Good morning, Vikram Kopikar. Hi, Riddhi Kapoor. Hi, Nick Vermeulen. Hi, Prachi. Ravi Sharma, thank you very much for your tweet. Nishit Vora and somebody called Pagal Pillu. All you wonderful people shouting to us on social networking. Thank you for rolling in, Sudhakar Ram. It was such an enlightening session. I was riveted.